you walk into the room and something shifts in the atmosphere, not because you're the loudest voice or the center of attention, but because you carry something that most men have lost: complete ownership of yourself. Women sense it immediately, this quiet intensity, this refusal to seek approval, this willingness to exist on your own terms regardless of who finds it uncomfortable. They're simultaneously drawn to you and unnerved by you. Drawn because authentic masculine power is rare and magnetic. Unnerved because you represent something dangerous to the comfortable dynamics they're used to controlling. You don't need their validation, don't seek their permission, and don't modify yourself to earn their approval. This isn't the manufactured bad boy persona that insecure men perform to appear dangerous. This is something far more threatening: a man who has killed his need for external validation and built his identity from his own values rather than society's expectations. A man who creates his own meaning instead of seeking it from others. Today, I'm going to reveal how to become this kind of man, the one women desire precisely because he's dangerous to their attempts at psychological control, because the most attractive man is the one who cannot be managed, manipulated, or made to betray his authentic nature for anyone's comfort. The first step toward becoming genuinely dangerous to women who seek to control men is killing the parts of yourself that still beg for acceptance. This death is necessary because as long as you need approval from others, you can be manipulated through the promise or withdrawal of that approval. This death isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing process of recognizing and eliminating behaviors, thoughts, and emotional patterns that prioritize others' comfort over your own authenticity. Every time you catch yourself modifying your opinion to avoid conflict, softening your position to appear agreeable, or suppressing your genuine reaction to maintain harmony, you have an opportunity to choose death of the approval-seeking self. The death process is painful because it requires abandoning the psychological safety that comes from being liked, accepted, and approved of by others. You must face the terror of existing without external validation while building internal sources of worth that don't depend on others' opinions. This transformation is particularly threatening to women because it eliminates their primary tool for managing male behavior. When you no longer need their approval, they lose the ability to shape your actions through the strategic distribution of acceptance and rejection. The death of the approval-seeking self also means accepting that some people will dislike you, some will misunderstand you, and some will actively work against you. This acceptance is liberating because it frees you from the exhausting work of trying to be acceptable to everyone. Most men never complete this death because the pain of disapproval feels unbearable. They prefer the familiar prison of people-pleasing to the unknown territory of self-ownership, not realizing that this choice condemns them to perpetual weakness. Once you've killed your need for external validation, you must fill the vacuum with something of your own creation, a personal value system that guides your decisions regardless of others' opinions or social expectations. This creation process is what transforms you from a reactor to others into a force that shapes reality according to your own vision. Creating personal values requires deep self-examination to identify what you actually believe versus what you've been taught to believe. You must distinguish between inherited values that serve others' interests and chosen values that serve your authentic development and expression. This creation process is dangerous to others because it makes you unpredictable according to their frameworks for understanding and controlling male behavior. They can no longer assume you'll respond according to social programming, because you're operating from internally generated principles. Personal values must be tested through experience rather than just intellectually adopted. You discover your true values by observing what you're willing to sacrifice for, what you refuse to compromise on, and what drives your behavior when no one is watching. The creation of authentic values often puts you in conflict with social expectations, relationship demands, and group pressures. This conflict is inevitable because truly personal values serve your individual development rather than collective harmony. Women find this value creation both attractive and threatening. Attractive because it represents psychological strength and independence. Threatening because it means they cannot easily predict or control your responses to their behavior. Becoming genuinely dangerous requires embracing periods of isolation, where you develop psychological independence from the opinions, expectations, and emotional reactions of others. This isolation isn't antisocial withdrawal. It's the conscious choice to spend time alone building your relationship with yourself. In isolation, you discover who you are when you're not performing for others, responding to their needs, or managing their emotional states. You encounter your authentic thoughts, preferences, and reactions without the filter of social consideration. This isolation is particularly important for men because masculine development requires separation from the collective in order to develop individual strength and clarity. You cannot become psychologically dangerous while remaining emotionally dependent on others for your sense of identity and worth. The isolation process reveals which aspects of your personality are genuine versus which are adaptations to social pressure. You begin to distinguish between your authentic voice and the voices you've internalized from others who wanted to shape you according to their preferences. Women often resist men's need for isolation because it threatens their ability to maintain emotional connection and influence. They interpret your need for space as rejection, rather than recognizing it as essential for your psychological development. The strength you develop in isolation becomes the foundation for all your other relationships. When you're comfortable being alone with yourself, you can engage with others from choice rather than need, making you simultaneously more attractive and more difficult to control. True danger to women's control mechanisms comes from developing internal authority, the capacity to make decisions based on your own assessment of situations rather than seeking consensus or approval from others. This authority is built through the conscious practice of trusting your own judgment, even when it conflicts with popular opinion. Internal authority develops through repeatedly choosing your own assessment over others' suggestions, especially in situations where the social pressure to conform is strong. Each time you act according to your own judgment despite others' disapproval, you strengthen this psychological muscle. This authority is dangerous because it makes you immune to manipulation through guilt, shame, or social pressure. Women who are accustomed to influencing male behavior through emotional manipulation find themselves powerless when confronted with genuine internal authority. The construction process requires accepting responsibility for the consequences of your decisions rather than blaming others when your choices produce unwanted outcomes. This responsibility acceptance is what distinguishes authentic authority from defensive rebellion. Internal authority also means being willing to be wrong and learning from mistakes without allowing those mistakes to undermine your confidence in your ability to make decisions. You maintain authority over your own life while remaining open to new information and perspectives. Women are simultaneously attracted to and threatened by internal authority. Attracted because it represents the psychological strength they seek in masculine partners. Threatened because it means they cannot easily override your judgment with their emotional reactions or social pressure. Perhaps the most threatening quality you can develop is selective indifference, the ability to remain emotionally unaffected by others' attempts to provoke reactions through drama, manipulation, or emotional intensity. This indifference is dangerous because it neutralizes the primary weapons used to control male behavior. This indifference isn't cold detachment or emotional numbness. It's the conscious choice to not allow others' emotional states to dictate your own emotional responses. You can care about someone without being controlled by their moods, reactions, or attempts to create urgency around their needs. Selective indifference requires developing emotional regulation skills that allow you to observe others' emotional displays without automatically absorbing or reacting to that emotional energy. You become a witness to their emotions rather than a participant in their emotional dramas. This quality is particularly dangerous to women who use emotional volatility to create urgency around their needs or to punish behavior they don't approve of. Your indifference eliminates the reward they receive from these emotional performances. The art of indifference also extends to being unaffected by social pressure, criticism, or attempts to shame you into compliance. You maintain your internal equilibrium regardless of external turbulence, making you psychologically unmanageable. Developing this indifference requires practice in situations where others are attempting to provoke emotional reactions. Each time you choose calm observation over emotional reactivity, you strengthen your capacity for dangerous indifference. If you're beginning to understand how developing psychological independence can make you both more attractive and more threatening to women who are used to controlling men through emotional manipulation, subscribe and hit that notification bell. What I'm revealing today about authentic masculine danger could transform how you navigate all your relationships. Becoming truly dangerous requires actively rebelling against the forces of mediocrity that seek to keep you small, safe, and manageable. This rebellion isn't about breaking rules for the sake of rebellion. It's about refusing to live according to standards that serve others' comfort, rather than your own development. The rebellion begins with recognizing how society, relationships, and social groups subtly pressure you to remain within acceptable limits of ambition, authenticity, and independence. These pressures are designed to maintain stability and predictability at the expense of individual excellence. You rebel by pursuing excellence in areas that matter to you regardless of whether others understand or approve of your choices. This pursuit of personal excellence threatens mediocre people because it exposes the gap between what's possible and what they've settled for. The rebellion also involves refusing to participate in conversations, activities, and relationships that drain your energy without providing value in return. You become selective about where you invest your time and attention, prioritizing quality over social obligation. This rebellion against mediocrity makes you dangerous because you represent what others could become if they had the courage to break free from limiting beliefs and social constraints. Your existence becomes a challenge to their comfort with their own limitations. Women often resist men's rebellion against mediocrity because it can disrupt comfortable relationship dynamics where both partners have agreed to remain within safe, predictable boundaries rather than pursuing individual growth that might create uncertainty. True psychological danger comes from your willingness to destroy aspects of your life that no longer serve your development, even when that destruction creates temporary chaos or uncertainty. This creative destruction is what allows for genuine growth and transformation. Creative destruction might involve ending relationships that have become limiting, leaving careers that don't align with your values, or abandoning social groups that pressure you to remain who you were rather than supporting who you're becoming. This willingness to destroy what isn't working is dangerous because it demonstrates that you value your own development more than stability, comfort, or others' expectations about who you should remain. It shows that you're willing to sacrifice security for authenticity. The power emerges from your comfort with uncertainty, and your faith in your ability to rebuild better structures on the foundation of what you've destroyed. You're not destroying randomly, you're clearing space for something better. Women find this quality both attractive and terrifying. Attractive because it represents strength and commitment to growth. Terrifying because it means you might be willing to destroy aspects of your relationship with them if those aspects become limiting to your development. The creative destruction process requires wisdom to distinguish between what should be preserved and what should be eliminated. You develop this wisdom through experience and honest self-assessment, rather than following others' advice about what you should keep or discard. While much of becoming dangerous involves developing strength and independence, true mastery includes knowing when and how to be strategically vulnerable in ways that create deeper connection without sacrificing your power or authenticity. Strategic vulnerability means choosing to share your struggles, uncertainties, or emotions when that sharing serves relationship building, rather than using vulnerability as a manipulation tactic to gain sympathy or avoid responsibility. This mastery is dangerous because it allows you to create intense intimacy while maintaining your psychological independence. Women experience profound connection with you without gaining the ability to control you through that connection. Strategic vulnerability requires strong boundaries about what you share, when you share it, and with whom. You're selective about your openness, making it more valuable when you choose to provide it. The danger lies in your ability to be emotionally present and authentic while remaining psychologically autonomous. This combination is rare among men and creates powerful attraction while frustrating attempts at emotional manipulation. Women who encounter strategic vulnerability from psychologically dangerous men often experience it as the most attractive quality because it represents strength that chooses connection rather than weakness that needs connection. Becoming dangerous involves treating your attention as a valuable resource that must be earned rather than freely distributed to anyone who demands it. This economic approach to attention management is threatening because it forces others to provide value in exchange for access to your mental and emotional energy. The economics of attention means being selective about conversations, activities, and relationships that receive your focus. You invest attention where it creates value, growth, or genuine connection, rather than distributing it equally to all demands. This selectivity is dangerous because it disrupts the assumption that your attention should be freely available to anyone who wants it. People who have become accustomed to easy access to male attention find themselves having to compete for and earn that access. The economic approach also involves withdrawing attention from people and situations that consistently drain your energy without providing reciprocal value. You become willing to appear rude or uncaring rather than continuing to subsidize others' emotional needs with your attention. Women often resist this economic approach because they're accustomed to male attention being abundant and freely given. When you make your attention scarce and valuable, it forces them to reconsider how they interact with you. Managing attention economically requires developing awareness of where your mental energy goes, and making conscious choices about those investments, rather than automatically responding to whatever demands your attention most loudly. Perhaps the most dangerous quality you can develop is the ability to care deeply about what matters to you while remaining genuinely indifferent to what doesn't matter, regardless of social pressure to care about everything equally. This selective caring requires identifying what actually deserves your emotional investment versus what society, relationships, or social groups insist you should care about. You become willing to be seen as heartless about issues that don't align with your values while caring intensely about issues that do. The philosophy is dangerous because it makes you unpredictable according to social expectations about what good men should care about. You might be deeply moved by individual suffering while remaining unmoved by collective causes, or vice versa. Selective caring also applies to relationships, where you invest emotional energy in people who reciprocate that investment, while withdrawing from people who take your caring for granted or use it against you. This approach threatens people who depend on your automatic caring about their needs, problems, or causes. They lose the ability to manipulate your behavior through guilt about not caring enough about what matters to them. Women find selective caring both attractive and frustrating. Attractive because your caring feels more valuable when it's chosen, rather than automatic. Frustrating because they cannot assume they'll receive your emotional investment simply because they want or need it. True danger requires integrating your shadow, the parts of your personality that you've been taught to hide or suppress because they're socially unacceptable. This integration doesn't mean becoming destructive, it means accessing the power that's been locked away in your unconscious. Shadow integration involves acknowledging your capacity for selfishness, aggression, dominance, and other traits that have been pathologized in men but are actually sources of strength when properly channeled. This integration is dangerous because it makes you complete, rather than splitting your personality between acceptable and unacceptable parts. When you own all aspects of yourself, you become unpredictable to people who have learned to manipulate your behavior by exploiting your denial of your shadow qualities. The integration process requires honest self-examination to identify what you've been hiding from yourself and others. You must be willing to admit that you have desires, impulses, and capabilities that don't fit the sanitized version of masculinity that society promotes. Shadow integration also involves learning to express these qualities in ways that serve your goals rather than suppressing them until they explode destructively. You channel aggressive energy into competitive drive, selfish impulses into healthy boundaries, and dominant tendencies into leadership capabilities. Women are both attracted to and threatened by shadow integration because it represents masculine wholeness that cannot be easily categorized or controlled through social shaming about which aspects of masculinity are acceptable. The most dangerous men are those who have learned to embrace the chaos within themselves, rather than seeking the false peace that comes from conformity and social acceptance. This internal chaos isn't dysfunction. It's the raw creative energy that most men suppress in order to appear stable and manageable. This chaos manifests as the tension between who you've been taught to be and who you actually are, between social expectations and authentic desires, between the need for approval and the drive for independence. Most men try to resolve this tension by choosing one side or the other, but dangerous men learn to harness the energy generated by this internal conflict. The transformation occurs when you stop trying to eliminate this chaos and start using it as fuel for creation. The same internal conflict that makes you uncomfortable in conventional social situations becomes the source of your unique perspective, your creative solutions, and your ability to see possibilities that others miss. This internal chaos is what allows you to give birth to what could be called your dancing star, the unique expression of masculine power that emerges when you stop trying to fit into categories others have created for you. This star is dangerous because it's unpredictable, beautiful because it's authentic, and magnetic because it represents something most men have sacrificed for social acceptance. Women are simultaneously drawn to and threatened by men who have transformed their internal chaos into creative power because it represents a level of psychological integration and authentic self-expression that most people never achieve. The shift from manageable man to dangerous man occurs when you change the fundamental question that guides your decisions. Instead of asking, "Is this allowed?" or "Will this be approved of?" you begin asking, "Is this worthy of me?" This question shift is revolutionary because it places your own assessment of value and meaning at the center of your decision-making process, rather than external authorities or social consensus. You become the judge of what deserves your time, energy, and attention, based on your own standards rather than others' expectations. The question, "Is this worthy of me?" forces you to develop clear standards about what you will and won't accept in your relationships, career, and life circumstances. It requires you to know yourself well enough to distinguish between opportunities that serve your development and those that merely serve others' comfort. This shift is dangerous to others because it makes you immune to manipulation through social pressure, guilt, or the threat of disapproval. When your decisions are guided by your own assessment of worthiness rather than others' approval, you become ungovernable through conventional control mechanisms. The question also applies to how you allow others to treat you. Instead of accepting poor treatment because it's what you're offered, you evaluate whether that treatment meets your standards for what you deserve. This evaluation often leads to relationship changes that others find threatening. Women who encounter men operating from this question framework often experience intense attraction, mixed with frustration, because they cannot easily predict or influence your choices through the usual methods of emotional manipulation or social pressure. Becoming truly dangerous requires periods where you deliberately remove yourself from all external validation, support, and guidance to discover what you're capable of when you have only yourself to rely on. This psychological desert is where authentic strength is forged. In this desert, there are no cheerleaders encouraging you, no critics to rebel against, no social media to provide instant feedback on your choices. There's only you, your values, and your commitment to becoming who you're capable of becoming, regardless of external recognition. The desert experience reveals which of your motivations are authentic versus which depend on external reward or recognition. You discover what you're willing to pursue even when no one is watching, what standards you maintain even when no one would know if you lowered them. This isolation is particularly crucial for men because masculine development requires separation from collective influence in order to develop individual strength and clarity. You cannot become psychologically dangerous while remaining dependent on others for motivation, direction, or validation. The desert period also teaches you to find satisfaction in your own progress and development, rather than in others' recognition of that progress. This internal satisfaction is what makes you immune to manipulation through praise or criticism. Most men avoid the desert because the loneliness feels unbearable, but those who complete this journey emerge with unshakable confidence in their ability to create meaning and direction from their own resources, rather than depending on others to provide these things. As you develop authentic masculine power, you'll encounter predictable resistance from the groups that previously accepted you. This resistance follows a pattern that's important to understand so you can navigate it without being deterred from your development. The first stage is subtle mockery disguised as concern. Others will make jokes about your changes, express worry about your new phase, or suggest that you're taking yourself too seriously. This stage is designed to test your commitment to your new direction. The second stage involves more direct pressure to return to your previous behavior patterns. Friends may exclude you from activities, family members may express disappointment, and partners may threaten relationship consequences if you don't return to being the person you were before. The final stage is open hostility, where others actively work to undermine your confidence, sabotage your progress, or punish you for refusing to return to manageable behavior patterns. This stage reveals who was genuinely supportive of your well-being versus who was invested in keeping you small for their own comfort. Understanding this pattern helps you maintain your course without being surprised or deterred by the resistance. The intensity of the resistance often correlates with the significance of your transformation. The more threatening your development is to others' comfort zones, the stronger their attempts to stop it will be. Women are particularly likely to engage in tribal resistance when men begin developing genuine psychological independence because it threatens their ability to maintain control through emotional manipulation and social pressure. The most dangerous shift you can make is redefining strength from the ability to endure circumstances to the power to transform them. Instead of asking life to be easier, you develop the capacity to become stronger, more capable, and more resourceful in facing whatever challenges arise. This redefinition is revolutionary because it transforms you from a victim of circumstances into an agent of change. You stop waiting for external conditions to improve and start developing internal capabilities that allow you to create the conditions you want. The strength redefinition also means accepting that growth requires discomfort, that transformation demands the destruction of comfortable but limiting patterns, and that authentic power comes from your willingness to face difficulties rather than your ability to avoid them. This approach to strength is dangerous to others because it makes you unpredictable and immune to control through the creation of difficult circumstances. When you welcome challenges as opportunities for growth rather than problems to be avoided, others lose the ability to manipulate you through the threat of discomfort. Women often find this redefinition of strength both attractive and threatening. Attractive because it represents the kind of masculine resilience they seek in partners. Threatening because it means you cannot be controlled through the creation of relationship drama or emotional difficulties. The revolution occurs when you realize that your capacity to transform yourself and your circumstances is the only true security in an uncertain world, making external validation and approval irrelevant to your fundamental well-being. The fundamental truth about becoming the man women desire and sense danger from is that this danger doesn't come from being harmful, aggressive, or cruel. It comes from being so completely yourself that you cannot be manipulated, managed, or made to betray your authentic nature for anyone's comfort. This authenticity is dangerous to control systems because it makes you immune to the psychological weapons typically used to manage male behavior: guilt, shame, social pressure, and the threat of disapproval or abandonment. Women desire this quality because it represents the psychological strength and independence they seek in masculine partners. They sense danger from it because it means they cannot easily predict or control your responses to their behavior. The development of this dangerous authenticity requires sacrifice. The sacrifice of easy social acceptance, comfortable relationships, and the psychological safety that comes from conformity. But this sacrifice creates space for genuine relationships based on mutual respect rather than manipulation. The most dangerous men are not those who harm others, but those who cannot be harmed by others' attempts to control them. They've developed psychological immunity to manipulation while maintaining the capacity for deep connection with people who approach them authentically. Becoming this kind of man is a lifelong process of continuous self-development, boundary enforcement, and the courage to remain true to your authentic nature despite social pressure to conform to others' expectations about who you should be. The ultimate danger you represent is not to women specifically, but to any system that depends on your compliance, insecurity, or need for external validation to function. When you own yourself completely, you become ungovernable by anyone who doesn't have your genuine best interests at heart. This ungovernable quality is what makes you simultaneously attractive and threatening, desirable and dangerous. It's the mark of a man who has chosen authentic power over social acceptance, and who lives according to his own values rather than others' expectations. Share this analysis with any man who's tired of being manageable, and wants to understand that real masculine power comes from complete self-ownership, rather than the ability to control others. The most attractive man is the one who cannot be controlled, manipulated, or made to abandon his authentic nature for anyone's comfort.